Welcome to the Defining Your Niche podcast, where we dive into alternative asset classes in commercial real estate, specifically self-storage. And today we're going to talk a lot about small bay flex. I am your host, Thaddeus Campbell, blessed to be joined today by Brian Whitmer, co-founder of Doors and Spaces. He and his partner are diving full-fledged into this small bay flex industrial park asset class, and I'm really excited. I got a chance to be on a virtual event with Brian. He was one of the most well-received speakers we had on that event and just knows it inside and out. So I'm excited to have him come in, tell his story as always, and also share with you guys some of what he's working on. So Brian, first and foremost, thanks so much for taking some time to come on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here, and we follow these podcasts, and as we're defining an asset subtype right now, it takes a village to build it, to grow it, to get everybody educated on it. And I love it because we're sharing information and there's no right answer. And it's everybody's winding up the machine to see where this goes. So I love the infancy of it and excited to see where we take it. And look, we're all going to look back. I'm pretty confident, and we're going to say, hey, we all got together, with our training wheels on, and Thaddeus was one of the reasons why, this subtype became what it was. So
I so appreciate the kind words, and you brought up something that I'm excited to dive into. I always ask the same question first, and I'm not going to deviate, but you brought up this idea of infancy. And we're going to talk about that because it's such an interesting aspect of this asset class in so many different ways. So it gives us a lot of questions to ask. But before I go there, I always ask the same question because we deal with these really niche asset classes. And listen, most people start out in real estate with a 3-day weekend event on how to flip houses and invest in residential real estate, right? Very few people sit at the table and are like, you know what, I'm going to invest in self-storage, or I'm going to invest in small bay industrial flex. So I want to get the story of how does Brian Whitmer even come up with small bay flex as an asset class he wants to get involved in?
No, I've been in real estate my whole career, and doing brokerage for a large part of it in the tri-state region, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and came from a multidiscipline team where I got the benefit of seeing office and industrial and retail and multifamily and land and all of the major classes. And then you got to see the different trends develop over, my 2 decades of doing it. And when I was making a decision, what did I want to do, say for, V2 Brian, and if I was going to leave the brokerage world, I saw the small bay flex. Every time I saw it, it was fragmented ownership, and a lot of it was owned by mom and pops or contractors that built it for themselves, and it was always full. And you would see things where there was disparities because it is not widely leased. It is done on Facebook Marketplace. There's just not a lot of transparency into it at the moment. And you can have a legacy property that's been owned for 20 years by somebody who's never really had to go to the outside market. All the tenants have stayed. Let's just say they're in single-digit rents. And you have somebody down the street that for one reason or the other built the type of, let's say, sub 5,000 square foot, all doors, no docks product, and they're getting mid-teens to high-teens rents. Why? You just don't have brokers covering the market, educating everybody and educating the tenants. And as you see this over and over and over, you start to say, there is opportunity here in a big way. And then I started to see, people within the industrial business start to leave their jobs at big companies, go join family offices and start to fly the flag of, we're going to build this niche. It ain't storage, but it also ain't the traditional flex where, let's say that's a 5,000 to 15,000 square foot user, generally relying on docks and not doors. And who's going to build out this niche product? And it was a course of a few years watching it, looking at it, seeing people in different parts of the country start to get into it, where said, look, this is where we're going to go, and we're jumping in 2 feet. And we're going to build it out because I know on the back end, We're going to build a portfolio, and this is product that's going to be well received by the user base. The towns need it, and the capital is going to follow too. So
there's
that's how we
so
got
much
here.
to unpack in what you just said. I'm stealing a line from my partner Russell Nursesaf. He loves to say there's so much to unpack, and I just robbed that from him. But I'm going to start with this piece of it, which is something you said, that the leases are not widely publicized, right? Like, a lot of this stuff does not transact through commercial brokers, and that makes it harder on our end. Obviously, a lot of people watching know that we're also developing one of these types of sites as well, and it's something that we're in. Tell me what that means to you as an investor. That, like, look, in storage, I can go on Radius Plus, Store Track, Yardi. There's another one called Track. I got 4 different websites I can go on that tell me exactly what the guy down the street is advertising on their website for lease rates for their units, right? The information is readily accessible. It is not like that in small bay industrial flex. And so for you as an investor, what does that mean to you? How do you see that?
That's opportunity. And that's a big opportunity because that's where we're going, but we're not there now. So, in the interim, because you do not have the visibility and the transparency into what everybody's getting, you will be able to make more opportunistic buys. Because if you can buy the facility that had been, leased up 10 years ago without anybody really knowing what this subtype should rent for, and what that market's supporting, that you can roll these rents up double triple sometimes. And we are absolutely hearing all these stories from people who are going around the country and assembling all of this product. So there's big near-term rent growth because of what you just said. And we're going to wake up in 5 or 10 years, and that's going to be gone. And that's going to be okay, because at that point, everybody who got here and built out this asset subtype, and more of the institutional capital is going to follow. That's what they're going to need to see, and that's what's going to come as a byproduct of it. But between then and now, let's get out there and let's take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think for us as a company, it's one of the reasons that we aren't out of storage by any stretch of the imagination. We still look at storage deals every day, but one of the reasons we got so excited by this asset class, we think very much like you do, where it's an opportunity. The waters are not reddened yet. What's neat is, though, and to your point about the story, we had a conversation with a broker down here in the South Jersey market where I am 2 weeks ago. They represent a big private equity group out of the West Coast that bought a 13-unit portfolio in South Jersey. They doubled rents in the last year and a half on every single lease that expired and had 0 people move out, right? They didn't lose a single tenant, raising rents 100%. And that speaks to the opportunity in the space, because what's the alternative? This stuff hasn't gotten built in the last 30 years in any real big way. So I'm going to ask that question to you. Why, especially with your background coming from commercial brokerage, you're well positioned to answer to this. Why has this asset been overlooked for so long? Why isn't there more of this product available? Obviously, when rents are doubling and tripling, it's supply and demand, right? If there was enough supply in the market, you wouldn't be able to double and triple rents. Why doesn't that supply exist?
Because of the size of the properties. Right? It's industrial has come into, I would say, an asset class that institutionalized. If you think about apartments, go back into the late 90s, coming into the 2000s, when the apartment REITs were forming, and it went from a private ownership mom and pop business to one dominated by Wall Street and big institutional capital. And then industrial in the 2000s was along that same path, and then it got supercharged in COVID, and that's where everybody went. So there's also the retailization of industrial, where the retail square footage went away from the stores and more online, which shifted it into the warehousing. You also had the opening of the Etsy's of the world and direct to consumer type businesses that didn't exist 20, 30 years ago. So you're going to get that in the small bay flex. And, there's a sequence of events that got us to the point that now everybody's starting to look up and down the asset subtype chain of industrial. And where did you go first, right? Everybody followed Amazon. And where did the industrial expansion go? It went to million square foot buildings for the 3PLs and the Amazons. And then when that got figured out, then everybody started to say, okay, now let's go buy the 500,000 square footers, 300,000 square footers. Let's keep going, right? So I'm going to buy a 100 or 2,000 square foot building that used to be chopped up 5 or 10 ways. Now that got opened up to lease to 50,000 to 100,000 square foot users. And what happened was you kept displacing the smaller and smaller and smaller tenants, and through that, then the rents that people or users or tenants needed to pay on the very smallest end, went up and up and up, where they got squeezed out into secondary and tertiary areas. So it's been a confluence of many things that have led us to the point that, you're starting to say there's industrial subtypes that the rents are supporting new construction. That it has now become the demand has definitely outstripped the supply, going back to e-commerce and direct to consumers, and the plumbers that used to be in a bigger building, and now they're looking for somewhere else to go because they got displaced by logistical tenants.
Yep.
And so here we are saying, okay, the bigger companies that are less entrepreneurial, they got to focus on the million square footers, the 500,000s, the 100,000s. And what they're not saying is, and what we're doing right now is saying, okay, we're nimble and young enough that we can go and focus on the 30 to 50,000 square foot, small bay service industrial. Let's go back to, what does that mean for us? It's less than 5,000 square foot tenants, and we are doors, not docks. We're vans, we're not trailers.
Yep.
And we're catering to that space. And in that space, let's just say that it's a $7 to $10 million build. Alone, that's not exciting. But when you start getting 5 of them, 10 of them, 20 of them, 50 of them, now you've got to the point where you've got a portfolio that is going to get the attention of the large capital providers in the large industrial, because you have a proof of concept, you have economies of scale, you have an operating business you can step into.
Yep.
That's where we're going, and I think that's where this subtype that we're talking about is going, because you're having multiple people around the country all start to execute a very similar strategy that we're doing. We just happen to be based in New Jersey. We know there's folks in the Carolinas. We know there's folks in the mountain states that are doing it. And we think it's great because we all have to build this thing together.
I love that. And another thing that I wanted to unpack from your original answer is, listen, this is so new. Like when we do storage, I got 5 people who'll tell me exactly how to put it together, exactly what the right unit mix is for that, CubeSmart, Extra Space. If they have a facility in the market, they can tell me exactly what unit mix is going to best serve that market based on their current clientele. We don't have that in Flex, right? Like there's not, in fact, for you and for us, right? 1,500 to 2,000 square foot units is kind of where we're targeting. It doesn't even exist in the market. Like you can't even find 1,500 square foot units in the market. What I want to add, there's a question coming here. I'm going to get there. But one of the things I admire about you and your partner is you've come up with a very specific concept of what you want to build. And you're not deviating from that. You're like, this is the product. This is what we're going to build. We're going to find a site that makes sense for this product. So the question I'm going to ask is, how did you come up with that idea? And by the way, feel free to show us if you want to share your screen. I know you laid it out for us on Tuesday what the product looks like. But how did you come with so much conviction to that product? And like you said, listen, you're not even messing with docks, right? You don't even want any access to a dock on your site. You only want drive-in doors. How do you come to that level of conviction?
I think it's a product of looking around and saying what works. You're having conversations with people who are building it. I've had family members that have gone into it and have given opinions as we've gone along. Um, Myself and my partners, we are financial, but then also who runs, heads construction for us. He grew up in an HVAC company, and we have definitely we try to know what we don't know. We ask as many stupid questions as we can to say, of all of the electricians and the plumbers and the small e-commerce, what is valuable to you, and let's take that opinion and apply it to the sites. What does the town really need? And then how do we put it together in a product that for us we're being very focused on. We want our product to be homogeneous. It should function the same. It should look the same. It should brand the same. So as we build out this portfolio, there's brand identity. Tenants know what they're getting. And if you do have a multi-locational service tenant, right, that is serving the needs of the local community, because that's generally who we get as a user base. If they got a location in Philly, they can go find one of our doors and spaces in Boston or wherever it is, and they know what they're going to get, how it's going to look, and how it's going to function, and what they can expect from us. So there is a long game here. But going back to your question, how did we get to conviction of where we are? It is, looking at existing product. It's looking at newer product. And then, some people are more RV focused. And, some people have said, hey, look, I think you can, make more money by having an RV dump station. That's not us, right? We're not RVs. We're not automotive services. We do not have floor drains in our units. That's not who we're going to cater to. So we've tried to refine our scope and go with it. And I will share.
I'm so impressed by that, and it jumped out at me. We were on this event on Tuesday, and by the way, for those of you watching, we're gonna have another event. Brian doesn't know this yet. This is the first announcement, but we're gonna have another event, similar webinar, not webinar, on a Zoom call, completely free. And I hope Brian will join us again because he was the star of the show. I was going to say, though, on that call, we also had Joe Downs and Belrose Development Group. They're doing something similar but different. And I love that, right? Like, it's not the exact same product. They're targeting a slightly different audience than you. And I always am so impressed by people who don't, I call them dandelions, right? The people that blow with the wind. They hear something and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I got to do that. You guys are so set on what your model looks like, and I'm impressed by that. Talk me through it.
So for us, we say for a site, what's one of our driving missions? And what do we say when we're in front of the town seeking approval? And what has been met generally 10 out of 10 times, with the towns being in very, very favorable of what we're building, because some towns don't want any more storage and they don't like industrial, and they think that we're going to have 100 box trucks here like in Amazon. That's not us. So what we say, hey, look, one of the things that we do is we want to get all of the service vehicles off of the streets and out of the driveways of the neighborhoods, and we want them here at night. We're lit, we have security, and we have space. So one of the things that we always want on our site is, if I can get my highlighter to work, we'll just do it in blocks, right? So we are always trying to program in 28-foot deep spaces. It accommodates the box trucks. It accommodates the large landscape trailers.
Yep.
And so at night, this is where the service vehicles are going. And in the daytime, they're replaced with the personal vehicles. So we have great parking ratios at these sites. This serves the community and benefits everybody on that aspect. What do we want? We want full circulation around the buildings. What we've seen is, there's buildings and concepts that should work, but they're not maximizing the rents, or they're hamstrung because they're shoved in the back of a park. They don't have full circulation. You can't get big vehicles in there. They're hitting the side of the building, or people just don't want to lease there as a result of it. We're not an afterthought. We're not going to be squeezed in the back of somebody's industrial park. We're picking sites that give us what we want, because we want to come out with a portfolio of 40, 50, 60 of these, look the same, feel the same, function the same. Right? And we want to have common trash, because people are going to want, their own roll off, whether it's cardboard or bulk trash. We want to give them this ability. If you don't need it, then you can just have canned trash. Over here, you're talking about, well, you know what we do? This is set up so you can get a 53 footer in here. You're going to offload, and you can cart down if you are getting pallets, receiving or giving. So we're just not, everybody says, well, why can't I just go rent a big storage unit? Where are you going to park your vehicles? Where are you going to have the option to have a bathroom if you want it? When you're meeting with your clients. So I'm somebody, I got 2 or 3 employees. I'm running a plumbing business. Right now I'm having meetings at Starbucks on the hood of my truck. Guess what? You take space here. We've got a conference room. We've got common bathrooms for your customers. Guess what? You've just upgraded your business. You have a competitive advantage above everybody else.
By the way, I'll just throw in there, and I mentioned this on the call we had on Tuesday. Try and rent a 1,400 square foot storage unit. There's one 3 miles up the street from me. Prime Storage is major operator in the space. $2,200 a month for 1,400 square feet. That represents almost $19 a square foot a year. Obviously they're not paying they're not paying common area maintenance. They're not paying taxes, but you're looking at a $15 triple net price on a storage unit. Not easy to access, right? You can't get in and out nice and easy and unload. You can't drive your truck into the storage unit. It doesn't have a 14-foot high door. You don't have an office. You don't have a bathroom, right? So as you said, yeah, go rent a storage unit. You're going to pay just as much money and not have anywhere near the accessibility or the amenities for it.
Correct. Or she could take you on the road. And this product is really the intersection between what you just described
Yeah.
and the traditional flex industrial building.
Yeah.
These no these what this subclass that you ran this webinar on, everybody on there knows what it is and who it's for and how it functions. And we generally know what we are and what we're not.
So talk
And
about that a little bit. How exciting is it to know who the user of this is going to be, and maybe kind of illuminate a little bit who you expect? You've already obviously talked about plumbers, but who do you expect to be renting this on a wide basis?
look, this is service industrial. So it is generally tradesmen who are serving the local area that are either operating out of their house, and so are their employees, or it is somebody who is, in a lot of the times what we find, in less than ideal or functionally challenged space. They're sharing a warehouse with multiple people. They have no sense of identity. They have no sense of security. Some of these tenants, their life's net worth is in their enclosed trailers. It is all their tools and equipment. And if that is stolen or gone or ruined, they're done. So we are providing 60-foot deep spaces. You can get multiple trailers in there. Like I said, we are lit. We have security. We've got great parking. We're pulling people out of those less than desirable situations and giving them something nice and giving them pride in their business. And that's who we have. Now, let's get into this. Everybody says, well, where's the credit? Well, look, these units rent for what is, at this point, they can be equal to a Class A two-bedroom apartment in most of these markets. They're $2,500 to $3,500 a month. Let's put this in reality. You're running a couple $1 million a year business. This is a rounding error, especially to have space this nice. So,
quite frankly, I'll throw my 2 cents in as someone who ran a martial arts school, and I was renting at the time Class A retail because you needed to at the time. A 3,000 square foot space for me was costing me $9,000 in 2012, right? So just to illuminate, look, and I was a less than $1 million a year gross business, right? So your place of business is going to take a chunk of your income, and that's okay. Even if you're not a $2 million business, you said it. I mean, we're talking about maybe $3,500 a month. Maybe you're paying $45,000 a year. Look, if you're generating $500,000 or $600,000 in gross revenue in a year, that's not a killer to your business by any stretch of the imagination.
No, look, and we, the other thing that we really love about this is small holes, small problems.
Yeah.
And it's the apartments of industrial. And if somebody does leave and the turnover is exceptionally low because it's a captive audience, where are you going to go?
Yeah.
Right? This is something that everybody knows they need, but nobody has started to meet the needs of the market. And these people are already there and they're somewhere. It's just now you're giving them more functional space and you're pulling them into something that was purpose built. And I don't mean to stay on tradesmen. You're going to have small e-commerce. You're going to have, tour buses that are worth $2 million.
Yeah.
From Jersey, it could be, Bruce Springsteen's bus. They're going to be here because it's a rounding error. You can also get very large contractors that are doing, some kind of a job. Now they need to store materials or they're pre-manufacturing HVAC trunks for the hospital down the street. They're going to need this space for a couple of years. There's so many avenues of demand for ththese spaces. It's batting cages, it's car detailing. It's everyone's like, well, where's the next tenant coming from? It just comes. And the other part of it is right on the relet is these buildings become little ecosystems of their own and environments and neighborhoods, and every tenant knows each tenant.
Yeah.
They socialize together, and as soon as somebody is leaving, retiring,
Yeah.
going to a
They
bigger
know
space
somebody
because the
else who
building
wants
got
that
bigger,
space.
you're going to hear about it from the existing tenant base way before you're ever going to have to advertise it for lease. It
Yeah.
just takes care of itself, and
Yeah.
it's
I love
amazing.
that. You get me even more excited. Like I'm already excited enough, but it's fun talking about because it's exciting. We know that this site, this asset has been so vastly underserved, and you illuminated the point. Why would anyone build a 75,000 square foot building that's got 1,500 square foot units when 10 years ago you could build a million square foot building, assign one tenant, and it's going to be a way greater return. The reality of that asset class is that it's listen, by no means is big box industrial done, but the wave has slowed considerably, and you're starting to see those spec buildings sit on the market for a couple years, which, especially in today's interest rate environment, is going to be super painful to people. So there's a question at the end of this again, and I've been wanting to ask you this question. It's a challenging environment right now. But the podcast that just aired, we're taping this on a Friday morning. The podcast I have live right now is with Cody Baker, who's a capital guy, goes and raises, finds debt for people. And he was talking about it, right? What was 4 years ago, 15 phone calls got 8 term sheets from banks, is now 130 phone calls to get 1 or 2 term sheets. So I guess the question I'm going to ask for you is, listen, we know the reality of the environment right now. It's challenging. It's not easy to go get projects done. How have you and your partner been able to maintain so much excitement, knowing that even with this asset class, even with the demand, it's a tough time to get stuff built?
It is. And so we have shouldered all of the expense to get the land under control, get through the entitlements, and then come out the back end. And, John and I have always been in finance, banking, brokerage, and we've built great relationships. And, some of this is the banks trust you and they understand the product. Your investors trust you and want to go along with you. And us being, um, regimented in what are we going to do and what is it going to return, and we are very realistic with ourselves of if we can't make it work, move on.
Yeah.
And we want to build these things in and around 9, 10, 11 caps, which we can attract the capital, and we can, they're getting appraised at sevens, and we can return capital once we're stabilized, and we roll it and do it again. So we're not stretching to try to build these to out of market returns. And if we think we're there, then we're on to something else. So I think it's, it boils down to, your sponsors are credible, the product is credible, and, their money's there, and it's got to go somewhere. And it's trying to find the lowest risk, highest return. And at the moment, part of this asset class is we've been able to buy land that has allowed us to have. We would say, is if people got 5 things on their desk, we're at the top 1 or 2 of risk and reward. And we've been successful in securing the capital, and investors that have done it with us once, they're lining up to do it again and again. So we haven't had to really fish too deep and too wide to have follow-on investors. But we're
I
also
love
at the
that.
point of, we're lining up 4, 5, 6 to come out of the ground, and behind that will be 8, 9, or 10, and we understand that our checks needs will grow from millions of dollars to tens of millions of dollars, and we're trying to think ahead of who's the next right partner for that. So
Man, so much about this impresses me so much, Brian. Not least of which is you know exactly where you're going right from the beginning, and that I'm a firm believer in visualization. I'm a Napoleon Hill reader for sure, and the idea of knowing what your goal is and speaking it into existence, but with reality, right? Like you don't speak it into existence by just talking. You go out and you do the work, and as you said, talking to so many people and seeing what the trends. We certainly believe that this is it. This is the asset class that's starting to build up that momentum and certainly hasn't reached the crest of the wave by any stretch of the imagination. I'll say this, really excited to be connected with you early on in this process because, like you, believe that this is going to turn into something amazing. And one of the things that I've taken out of my time in self storage. And as I talk to some of the really old heads, I'm very lucky to be able to talk to Mike Burnham, who is, he's one of the Mount Rushmores of Storage Mart out of Missouri, has been in the storage business since 1975, was literally at the first Self Storage Association meeting, talks about how they all helped each other and they had to. They had to help each other because there wasn't enough information available for them not to help each other. And so as we go into this small bay flex asset class, really excited to bring some of that spirit of the old school self-storage sector where, those conversations, sharing details were part and parcel of the process. And very, very thankful that you're one of those people that's in the Rolodex to be able to make a quick phone call to. Can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing it. And quite frankly, didn't get to everything I want to cover with you. So hopeful that in a few months we can come back and circle up and do this again.
Absolutely. I'd love to.
That's it for this episode of the Defining Your Niche podcast. As you know, he is hot and heavy after more product. He's looking for land for doors and spaces. So if you guys you'll see his contact information down at the bottom. You'll be able to get a hold of him if you feel like you have a piece of land. Whereabouts are you really looking? Like what's your wheelhouse for development areas in the country, Brian?
Right now, we're looking between Florida to Boston, and then we stretch over to Buffalo. Yeah. So really for us, it's committing to a market, and that market will have 4, 5, 6 opportunities.
And the next time we get on, I'm going to have you lay out, because you did something that blew my mind as far as how you identify where to build in a given market. I thought it was genius. So I'll have you share that the next time we get together. In the meantime, you will see us get him properties in that East Coast, the line, obviously East Coast, Boston down to Florida. We are always looking for existing facilities as well. So if you have something, bring it to us. You know how to get a hold of me. That's it for this week's episode of Defining Your Niche. We will see you next week. Thanks all for viewing. Listen, if you got something of value, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, give us a comment. We always like to have the feedback, and we'll see you guys soon.
Take care. Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.